to vote. Thanks, everybody. Hey, it's great to be here blasting the Fed, right? Yeah. You know, you have to wonder what bozo ever came up with the idea of giving politicians a hand in our money. Boom and bust, business cycles, recession, depression, inflation. Of course, inflation does ease the pain a bit every April 15th, doesn't it? I always think, hey, go ahead, steal most of what I earned last year. It's not worth anything now anyways. Yeah, politicians are real financial wizards. They not only created taxes and inflation, they gave us the war on poverty. And 40 years into it, what do we have? The poor folks are still poor, and now they're bailing out the rich corporations. Go figure. But hey, that's the way it always works. So at least you can say government is consistent in its evil. No matter where it interferes, education, the environment, the economy, hey, I haven't even left the E's yet, it louses things up beyond recognition. Here's another consistency. Politicians always come out on top, and the rest of us scramble to pay for it. In fact, something I modestly call Becky's Law kicks in here. When a politician really messes up our lives, the more he lies, the more he steals, the more he plunders us, the more elections he's going to win. It's always been that way, too. Remember Tom Paine explaining the origins of government and common sense? He said if we could trace government back to the dawn of history, to its beginnings, we'd find the first ruler was, quote, nothing better than the principal ruffian of some restless gang, a guy so brutal he became the, quote, chief among plunderers. But this ruffian was also disingenuous and persuasive. Every time he beat up another one of his subjects or stole the last crust of bread from a starving child, he managed to convince everyone he was doing it for their good. Paine says these predatory politicians kept increasing in power until they, quote, overawed the quiet and defenseless to purchase their safety by frequent contributions. That's taxes to you and me. Now here's the real joke. The only safety our taxes buy us is safety from our rulers. They're the threat they're protecting us from. They're like the mob, except they're not as honest. You better pay up or they'll break your legs. But they don't protect us from anything else. If you have any doubts about that, just remember that great big hole in the ground a couple miles to the south. It gets worse. Not only don't they protect us from anything but their own violence, they actually endanger us. Now, I hope no one here is foolish enough to believe the neoconservative nonsense about 9/11, that Muslims hate our freedom, and that's why 19 guys supposedly took their own lives flying planes into buildings. If you do believe that, you probably hate Muslims about as much as they hate our liberty. But I bet you're not planning a suicide mission to Mecca right now. No, U.S. politicians and bureaucrats and statesmen are the ones who caused 9/11. For almost 100 years, they played God in the Middle East, though neither the Constitution nor the people they treated like chess pieces ever gave them permission. They propped up horrific dictators so long as they could manipulate them. Anyone remember a guy named Saddam Hussein, whom the U.S. financed and encouraged as its ally against Iran? U.S. politicians and their foreign policy killed people overseas, destroyed their trade with embargoes and tariffs, and established military bases so American troops could bully the natives. Now you tell me, if Muslims had done that to us, would you hate them? If Iraq or Saudi Arabia or Libya had installed one of its puppets as U.S. president, and if President Puppet hauled your dad down to Gitmo and tortured him, would you hate Islam? If Iraqi or Libyan soldiers built barracks in your neighborhood and swaggered down your block, if they raped your sister and insulted your mother, would you want revenge? Politicians did this and more in the Middle East. And then when payback comes, they have the absolute unmitigated gall to blame the victims for striking back. But we don't need to go halfway around the world to see government's evil. Just look around. See the cops everywhere? New York City fields a larger army spying on us and policing us than General George Washington ever commanded at one time during the American Revolution. But hey, he was only trying to defeat the world's mightiest empire, not raise even more revenue by ticketing citizens who already pay some of the highest taxes in the nation. And that brings us to the definition of liberty. It means a whole lot more than paying low or no taxes, or even abolishing the Federal Reserve. It means abolishing all government, living free of it, living free of politicians' whims. If Mike Bloomberg thinks cigarette smoke and trans fat will kill you, fine, let him avoid both. But he shouldn't get to decide what we ingest, any more than we get to decide how many terms he'll serve in office. If Chuck Schumer wants universal health care, fine. Let him dig into his own pockets and buy it for me. Not tell all of you that you have to. Liberty means never asking permission for anything you want to do, so long as it's peaceful. You don't check in with the state if you want to homeschool your kids, or travel, or buy a radio station, or sell morphine. You don't beg the state for a license to practice your profession or drive a car. You grow pot on your windowsill if you want, just because you like the way it looks. You can carry a gun anywhere, at any time, just like cops do, in the open or concealed. But you don't have to carry ID, and you don't have to show it to the government's bullies, whether they stop you and frisk you on the street because you're black, or whether they steal your liquids and fill you up out at the airports because you bought an airline ticket. Americans used to understand this. They used to love liberty so much they'd rather die than live without it. And many of them did, right here in New York City. When an empire considerably freer than ours tried to tax them, they took up arms. When that empire tried to tell them what they could buy and from whom, as ours routinely does to us every day, they used those arms. You've heard of some of these folks. One guy was just 21 years old when the Redcoats hanged him a few miles north of here. They caught him spying on them. Funny, isn't it? Government always wants to know everything about us, but dang if we're allowed to know anything about it. Yeah. Nathan Hale tried to discover British plans for invading Manhattan so that Americans could defend themselves, and he hanged for his trouble. There's a statue of him over there in that fenced area where we mere taxpayers aren't allowed to go. Thousands more folks whose names we don't know starved to death right here in New York Bay. The Redcoats captured them fighting for liberty as they had Captain Hale. They imprisoned them in some of the city's largest buildings, places like the Sugar House. But there were so many men fighting to live free that they ran out of room, even though they crammed them in to beat the IRT during rush hour. So the Redcoats anchored ships out in the bay and jailed liberty's lovers there. They didn't feed them much, and you can't burn fires on a wooden ship to keep warm in the winters. In summers, on days like today, the ships below decks became furnaces. Men died by the thousands. Some historians estimate as many as 11,000. And that was despite red-coated recruiters visiting the ships, offering prisoners the chance to go ashore if they'd fight for tyranny. But those Americans preferred to die on their feet rather than live on their knees. Just like William Wallace. Remember in Braveheart when the government murders him? And what does he shout? Freedom! 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 Come on, shout it! Freedom! 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 Keep shouting it and keep fighting for it. Thank you.